He never built a machine. He never discovered a particle. But he built something else, a model of time itself. Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel didn't study the past, he decoded it. He believed that history wasn't random, that human civilization moves through a hidden rhythm of thought. Every age, every revolution, every collapse is part of a deeper logic, the dialectic, a process of contradiction and reconciliation that shapes both history and mind. From Darwin to Marx, Freud to Nietzsche, revolutions to modern art, all of them echo his system. He didn't predict events. He predicted patterns. Hegel was born in 1770 in Stuttgart, Germany, the same year as Beethoven. He studied theology and philosophy at the Tübinger Stift, reading Plato, Aristotle, Kant, and even the Bhagavad Gita, fascinated by its cyclic view of existence. He taught in Jena, Heidelberg, and Berlin, eventually becoming one of the most influential philosophers in Europe. He died in 1831 during a cholera outbreak, but his thought outlived every empire that followed. Because Hegel didn't just write philosophy. He wrote the architecture of change. For Hegel, reality wasn't static. It was becoming. Everything, from ideas to empires, begins as a thesis, meets its opposite, the antithesis, and resolves into a synthesis. But that synthesis isn't the end, it becomes the next thesis. And so the process repeats, eternally. This movement, contradiction giving birth to growth, is what Hegel called dialectics. It's not just a theory of thought, it's a law of existence. Everything real, Hegel said, is rational. And everything rational becomes real. In that single sentence, he captured the self-evolving logic of the universe. Hegel's ideas didn't stay in lecture halls. They spilled into politics, science, art, and even revolutions. His dialectic shaped Darwin's theory of evolution, nature as a dialogue between adaptation and resistance. It inspired Karl Marx, who reimagined it as class struggle, history as the collision of oppressor and oppressed. It influenced Freud, who turned contradiction inward, mapping the war between the conscious and the unconscious. And it reached Nietzsche, who replaced synthesis with eternal recurrence, the endless cycle of becoming. From modernism to absurdism, from cubism to existentialism, every creative rebellion carries Hegel's fingerprint. Because once you see contradiction as creation, you stop fearing it. In his masterpiece, Phenomenology of Spirit, Hegel describes the soul's journey from ignorance to absolute knowing. It's not a story about God, it's the story of mind itself, how consciousness evolves by confronting its own limits. Each stage of awareness negates the one before it, and in that tension, it grows. The slave becomes free. The individual becomes universal. The finite becomes infinite through self-recognition. For Hegel, history is the spirit waking up, humanity discovering itself as the universe thinking. Hegel didn't just describe change, he tried to build its blueprint. In the science of logic, he replaced traditional static logic, A is A, with dynamic logic, A becomes not A. Contradiction wasn't a flaw. It was the engine of reason. To think dialectically is to think evolutionarily, to see reality not as being, but as becoming. And once you understand that, you stop dividing life into opposites like good and evil, chaos and order, self and other. You begin to see that every opposite is part of one greater motion. History as a spiral, Hegel famously wrote. What experience in history teaches this? That people and governments never learn anything from history. He didn't mean that we repeat mistakes out of ignorance. He meant that repetition is the structure of progress. History doesn't move in circles, it moves in spirals. Each revolution revisits the past, but at a higher level of complexity. Ideas rise. Then they are challenged. And a new synthesis is born, and the cycle continues. That's why history feels both new and ancient, progressive yet repetitive. We are not trapped in loops. We are climbing them. Hegel's logic lives in everything we call modern, in AI, where data refines itself through feedback loops. In politics, where opposing ideologies merge into unstable compromises. In culture, where postmodernism deconstructs meaning only to rebuild it again. In psychology, where the self evolves through conflict and reconciliation. The dialectic is not just theory anymore, it's infrastructure. It runs through our systems, our sciences, our very thoughts. We live, unknowingly, inside his model. Hegel didn't predict the future by guessing events. He saw the mechanism that produces them. He realized that the world changes because it must, because every truth, once realized, creates its own opposition. And in that struggle, evolution happens. That's why his philosophy still breathes, because it describes not a world, but a process. We live in an age of contradictions, technological progress and spiritual emptiness, global connection and emotional isolation. But perhaps, if Hegel was right, these opposites are not a dead end, they are the seeds of the next synthesis. For Hegel, truth wasn't a point. It was a path. The universe is not a machine to be solved. It's a mind unfolding. And we, every generation, every revolution, every thought, are fragments of that unfolding. We are not outside the dialectic. We are its motion. The owl of Minerva spreads its wings only with the falling of dusk. He meant that wisdom arrives only after history has already happened. That understanding is retrospective. We see clearly only after the storm has passed. And yet, even knowing this, we continue forward, because thought itself is evolution, and contradiction is our destiny. If your mind enjoyed this, engage with Braingasm pages, like, share, comment and subscribe.